Okay, so let's get started. We're going to continue on in the Mussar study. This week we are looking at the Mudot of order. And we're kind of entering into the season of Passover, so we should all know what order is in Hebrew. Barb, what's order in Hebrew?
Chase me, but I know I did read something and I don't know if I read it right, but they were talking again, like somehow justifying slavery. It's like, are you kidding me?
In the book? Oh, I didn't look at the book.
Yeah, you know, how could you possibly think that's okay? Servant of God.
Hey, Mike, what's order in Hebrew?
Either Seder or Siddur.
Well, pick one.
Siddur.
I like Siddur myself, yeah.
Yeah.
Seder.
I see what it says in the book.
Yeah.
But,
What does the book say? Seder?
Seder,
Yeah,
yes.
that should be what it is. Where is it?
Because at the Passover Seder,
Yes.
the Seder is our order
Oh, okay, okay.
of how we proceed. Okay, so we'll look at kind of several aspects of order. There's several ways to approach it. First, let's look at 1 Corinthians 14:40. It says, "But let everything be done decently and in order." Straight from the Apostle Paul's letter. So, basically, to understand order, we need to look at how we apply that to our lives. How do we live our lives decently and in order? What does that mean? So there's several angles you could look at it at in your life. So, in going back to the prayer book, the Siddur, we can also look at that as an order because it does give us an order of our services and of our prayers and how we can do those in order and in a particular fashion. You know, when you look at the prayer book, each prayer is laid out in a certain way. We got the wording, it gives you an order, kind of gives you a bit of structure to follow. And it's designed to help us focus all of our attention in prayers, which require orderliness in order to develop a deep feeling of connection to God. Because God is a God of order and not the opposite order. What's the opposite of order? Anybody know?
Chaos.
Chaos, that's right. So, but all of us here have probably participated in a Passover Seder or in the prayer service, which we go through every Shabbat. So we notice that it's acceptable to kind of break off away from that order from time to time. You know, when I'm at home doing the Passover Seder, it's actually beneficial to kind of break off from it every now and then to kind of explain things a little deeper or to kind of look at something in a different angle, especially when you have kids present. And the Passover Seder, the whole point of it is for the kids to pass on this story and this tradition to the children, to the next generation. So you kind of have to break off from the order from time to time to make it palatable to a younger crowd. You know?
Is that why some people use the same Haggadah year after year after year, but some people they use this Haggadah this year or this Haggadah this year?
Yeah. And you know, every Haggadah has its own little special thing. I like to collect Haggadahs, Haggadot. So and each one has something different in it, you know. And I actually it took me a few years, but I actually wrote one for our family that's kind of our Haggadah. So it's kind of like our tradition that we do. One aspect of order, and when we look at order, we have to understand that we're looking at order kind of from a outside physical world point of view, and it kind of reflects back into our spiritual lives. You know, if your outside life is in chaos, your spiritual life is going to be in chaos. It kind of reflects. A guy years ago used to tell me that with the physical, there's always a reflection in the spiritual. You know, it always kind of reflects and balances. And going through life, I see that to be more true than anything. One thing to look at is schedules, how we value time, it has a big impact on order in our lives. My wife is perpetually late for everything. She is. And I am perpetually early for everything. And it's probably not by coincidence that God paired us together, because we kind of balance that out. It's just kind of embedded in her core to be late for everything. She can't help it. It's just, she is. And it's kind of embedded in my core to be early for everything. It drives me nuts if I'm on time, because for me, on time is late. So, and the reason I'm that way is because I feel like when you're early for something, you're showing the other person that you value their time and that they matter and that their time matters. That's how I've always thought of it. But following the time schedules and following, that part of your life is an aspect of order, because you're keeping things in order and neat and not chaos, because you have things planned out. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Also, look at music. When we play music, I play the guitar. We have a certain time for each song, a certain beat. Everything's got to be on that beat, and it follows a certain measure, and it's an order. And if I was playing and didn't pay attention to that measure and that beat, and I sing to a different one than when I'm playing, it's not going to sound right. It's going to sound like noise and mess. But when it's all on the same beat and the same measure, meter, and same everything, it kind of comes together and it sounds nice. See, that's another way to look at order in our lives, where we have to make sure it lines up with God and what He wants and how He wants us to live, and it kind of just turns into a beautiful song, if that makes sense.
Playing 4/4, playing 4/4 and singing 3/4.
Yeah. Let's see. So there are different ways we can look at order. We could give all kinds of names to it. We can call it customs, traditions, routines, habits, schedules. These can all be good things in our lives, and they can all be bad things in our lives. We can take all of them to an extreme, to the very bad extreme. We could be so rigid with a schedule or a tradition that it just gets out of sync and it messes everything up. So that's why we have to always be willing to step outside of it, a little bit, kind of like at the Seder, when we step out of it to kind of explain something, or not be so rigid like a military precision. You also think about creation. It was actually designed to operate on a schedule. God gave the sun and the moon, and they if you watch, they, like clockwork, they rise and they set, and they follow a time schedule. And the seasons, they follow a time schedule. We don't see winter coming out of order of the seasons normally, unless you're in Colorado. But you know what I mean, like the seasons follow a schedule. God set it up that way. Day and night follow each other. God set it up that way. So we even see order followed out in creation itself.
Is that what it's hinted to in Genesis 1? In Genesis 1:2, now the earth was chaos and waste, and darkness was over the surface of the deep. And then in verse 3, and then God said, let there be light. I mean, we can think of it not just the earth, but the universe as a whole. Before creation itself, the universe was in a state of chaos until God put order into it.
So, then you also think of your body. God created your body, and it has an order in a certain way that it operates. We eat food, it digests the food, it expunges the food. There's a process, an order that follows. We can also look at the Moedim, the set times of God. God set them in motion as a schedule, as an order that we follow. He gives us an order of how to worship Him and when to do it with those Moedim. You can't say that the Sabbath will be on the 4th day of the week because God ordained it to be on the 7th day of the week. So you have to follow that schedule. To change it would be like setting a dentist appointment on Wednesday and then showing up on Monday just because you decided to show up on Monday. The dentist probably wouldn't see you. He'd probably say come back when you're scheduled to come back. Look at Daniel chapter 6 verse 10. Does anybody want to turn to that? Anybody have a Bible?
Okay.
Find it yet?
Yeah. Now, when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened towards Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before.
So why did Daniel pray 3 times a day?
Because that's what we are commanded to do.
Yeah, but I'm looking for something more specific. It corresponded with what?
The sacrifices.
Yeah, it corresponded with the 3 daily sacrifices in the temple.
What verse was that again?
10.
Thanks.
Chapter 6, verse 10.
Okay, it's not the same one in here.
Might
This
be-
is the tree of life.
They might be following that Jewish numbering, I think. But King David, he also had a custom or habit of praying in the morning. We see this in Psalm 5:23 and 143:8. And Yeshua had a custom of going to a withdrawn place to pray. We see this in Mark 1, Luke 22, and Luke 5. So habits and customs and routines, they're not bad things. You know, they help keep us focused and grounded. They help us keep going. You know, if you have a set time each day that you pray, you're probably more likely to pray every day than if you didn't. Because we're all busy. You know, things come up. Having schedules help keep us on a schedule. I don't know what else to call it. So this can be, you know, especially true if they work to make our lives more and they make our life more life-giving. And you know, routines can also become ruts if we don't watch it. So you have to kind of keep the routines fresh. But it's good to have a set time to pray every day, or a set time to read the Word, or a set time to spend time with your family. Otherwise, other things will creep in and take their place. So, does anybody have anything to say about order so far, about those aspects of it? Like, does anybody here use a set time to pray every day? So how do you keep on that?
Practice. I think like just do it the same time every day, and after a while it becomes routine. Always, that's the hope.
Yeah?
I wouldn't say that it's a set time, like 9 o'clock or this or that, but it's basically at the same event every day when you go to bed at night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Usually, I get up from work in the morning, get dressed, and shower and do all that good stuff, and it's a reminder to spend time in prayer before I leave. The morning prayers, the morning Sha'arey prayers. Someone's being a pest. But I understand what Mike's saying. Monday through Friday, I know what time. Sunday, I'm not getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning. So Sunday, it may be later because I'm sleeping in a little bit. Unless, of course, we have a leadership meeting or something like that. But we won't go there. Even then, it's, still not 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything to share about order in their lives?
Here it talks about you journal. This person journals in the morning.
Yep.
And not at night. And every day. I mean, he does it every day. I don't know.
Well, I do think there's a balance when you look at congregations. Well, let's just look at churches as an example. You find both extremes. You find some extremes where everything is so orderly that anything outside of the norm creates this impression of chaos. When you become so rigid, then you don't allow room for the Spirit of God to really move. To say, hey, look, this person needs prayer. You need to stop. You need to pull them up front. You need to pray for them. Or we need an extra song. We're moving. Spirit's moving here. We need an extra song. We just need to keep going with worship. On the other extreme, as we've all seen, where a congregation can become completely chaotic and there's no order and there's no structure and everybody ends up doing what is right in their own eyes and people end up, doing laps around the church sanctuary or waving flags like they're landing airplanes. Won't mention any names. And so, there has to be a common sense balance, order that allows room for the Spirit of God to move as He chooses to move.
Yeah, and same way in our lives, our daily lives, you have to have that kind of balance because you could get so rigid, it just becomes habit and recitation. But if you have the balance, you can allow God to change things up or lead you to a different verse or even draw you into prayer at a different time, as long as you're listening to the Spirit to draw you in.
I mean, I have a routine. I don't know if there's a fine line between order or routine. Routine. Get up in the morning. Okay. Oh, first thing I better do. Blood sugar, insulin. Okay. But the order that I have found is getting up in the morning, doing all of these things. And if nobody's awake in the house, which is my favorite time, to get into prayer. And when everybody else is up before I am, my entire day is chaotic until I start getting ready to go to bed. I take my last insulin shot for the day. The house is quiet. And then I can get back into prayer. And, wow, did I make a mess out of my day this morning? Well, I'm going to try to get up earlier the next morning. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but there's that's how I can kind of keep things like orderly. Oh, insulin morning. Okay, got it. Nobody's up. I'll spend an hour or two in just the Word of pray. Then my life is a lot less chaotic during the day if I do that.
Well, the other thing is that
Order is actually a lot less emotionally fatiguing, which is, some people don't always realize that. If there's a lot of disorder, it takes a lot more work to maintain a status quo.
We kind of focus in on when we're praying and talking in communion with God. I pulled a little side study off of the author's website, Jewish Pathways. If you've never been there, go there. He's got a lot of neat stuff there. But he kind of, in this, I don't know if it's in the book or not, but in this he kind of compares our mind to a tornado when we don't have structure and order in our lives, where it's kind of compared to a tornado happening, and it's hard to hear the whisper of God when all that's happening. So he kind of uses order as a way of calming the storms of the mind and life down, so you can hear God whisper and speak to you. And I've heard you, Reb Jimmy, talk before about how the benefits of using the prayer book helps keep your mind focused. You want to talk about that?
Sure. It does help me to keep my mind focused, because my mind does have a tendency to wander. If I'm going through a trial, if I'm going through a struggle, just sitting down and talking with God with my heart just poured out, usually that's not an issue. It's the day-to-day grind. It's just getting up and facing the day again, the same thing day after day after day. Sometimes, if I didn't have the Siddur, it would really feel like, hey, God, what's up? Okay, I'm off today, so I ask for your protection and a good day, so we'll talk to you soon. And I don't know where to go from there. Because just trying to focus my attention, the Siddur really helps me a lot. As well as I have a little, I just print out a little sheet that I keep in my Siddur, and these are personal prayer requests that I ask for. That really is kind of those open-hearted, free-flowing prayers that I keep with me, and they're prayer requests for people here, prayer requests for family, whatever the case may be. And usually have maybe 7 or 8 of those I just keep with me, and I change them out maybe once a month or so and see what's going on. And that helps me as well, because I don't want to just become this stoic person who just kind of sits in front of the Siddur and reads the Siddur as fast as you can. And you get through it and, okay, I've done my duty, now I'm going to go on. I think God wants a deeper relationship with us than that. So again, it comes that balance. I think the Siddur definitely has a place there. And it's a valuable place that can certainly lead us in the right direction. It's that jumping point that will lead us. But it shouldn't be left at just that. I think it should lead us into an open-hearted, free-flowing prayer where we just pour our hearts out, or just talk with Him and just tell Him what's going on with you, what's going on with your family, or what have you. And I know every person's different. For me, sometimes depending on my mood, depending on what I'm going through, sometimes journaling helps. Sometimes just sitting down and writing in a journal and writing a love letter to God and telling what I'm going through. Sometimes that helps. Sometimes just getting into quiet, just getting away from everything, getting away from the chaos of, going from one place to another, and just getting quiet for a while and just spending time in prayer helps a lot too. That's one of the most difficult things, I think, is just getting quiet, especially when you got kids. Finding time for just quietness.
Yeah, kids bring chaos.
Yes.
So Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler, he was a product of a Mussar yeshiva. He lists 3 reasons why we should put our lives in order. Number 1 is order is good because knowing that things are well arranged creates a feeling of confidence that everything is under control. You think about, you come home and if your house is all clean, everything's nice and put in a place, it kind of feels a little freeing and, less stressful, so you can focus on other things. So with our lives, if our life is in order and we have an order for it and we're following an order, it kind of takes the pressure off of those things that just happen because they're in order, so we can focus more on other things that God may have on our plate. Number 2, order helps you find things when you need them and saves you the time that would be lost looking for them. How many people ever lost anything and spent hours just searching for it?
I lose things all the time.
Yeah. So they get your car keys. I mean, people lose car keys all the time. My wife and I used to lose our car keys all the time until we put a hook by the door, and we'd put them on the hook every time we come in. Now we never lose our keys. It saves a lot of time from having to look for those keys, so we have extra time to do other things instead of looking for keys.
You're bursting my bubble, Jonathan. Nothing to do with the perfect family.
We're not a perfect family.
I know,
It's
but-
just we learn from mistakes.
I have that conversation with Sarah quite a bit. She's the other, so I can talk about her a little bit. She still has her little blankie, although it's not really a blankie, it's her little tag. She likes her little tags. And she cannot go to sleep without it. But trying to get her to understand the concept of order and structure. She's, like a walking tornado. You can tell where she's been because it's usually like a trail left behind. I know she's downstairs because there's her shoes, there's her socks, there's her book, and you can just follow the trail. Well, and she has a tendency to take her tag and just, I don't need it right now, and just kind of, toss it. And then later on in the evening, she gets upset. I can't go to sleep without my tag. I need my tag. Well, where did you put it? I don't know. I can't find it. Well, if you put it up someplace before you went to bed, you would know where it was at instead of just tossing it somewhere. So,
So number 3, some things will only work if they are ordered correctly. Like think of a machine or a car. When you crank your car, and the engine has a cycle that it goes through in a certain order and it works because it goes in a certain order. If it did things out of order, the engine probably would break down and not run, and your car wouldn't go anywhere.
I have something to say about that.
Okay.
My car is a living example of that exact scenario. For 5 years, the wiring, the spark plugs were all wrong. And I got cruddy, that's a gentle word. I got half the gas mileage I'm getting now until someone looked in the book and said, this is not what it ought to be.
So it saves you gas and it works better. Less effort.
And
it was that time,
it
wasn't
doesn't
it?
go.
So our lives are like that too. Follow a certain order, work do things in an orderly fashion. It's less effort. Things work properly. We get where we're supposed to be going.
More efficient.
Yeah. Let's see. So let's think of the Torah. One extreme of order is looking at order as like a military precision, just checking things off the list. If we look at following the Torah that way, we kind of miss the whole point, because that's not the point of the Torah. You certainly could do that, but it kind of just misses the whole point. So what's the point of the Torah? The whole point. If you had to sum it up into one sentence, what's the point?
Instructions for daily life.
Yeah? What's the point, though?
To honor God.
To draw us
Glorify
closer to God. He's like, here's how you're to live if you're going to be my people, so I can fellowship with you, right?
Right.
So to sum it up, the whole point of the Torah is so we can fellowship with God the way He wants us to fellowship with Him. So we can go down through the Torah commandments, check them off one by one, but if we're just doing that for checking off Torah commandment sakes, we're kind of missing the point, right? But if we're going down through them, following them, so that we keep our eye on God and draw closer to Him, we're getting the point.
I look at when I look at Scripture, I see art. I see God's design through man, through the form of art, whether it's poetry or song or what have you. But there is clearly a difference between looking at Michelangelo and then looking at Jackson Pollock. Michelangelo's wonderful artist. You know what you're looking at. It's a beautiful depiction. There's great, just unimaginable talent there. And Jackson Pollock is just taking a bunch of paint and throwing it on an empty canvas. And it really is chaotic. And to me, and I know that not everybody agrees with this, but to me, you lose the beauty of art, because then art really just becomes chaos. And art should be about order, because it's about God. It's a reflection of who God is, and God is a God of order. And the Word, even though I look at Scripture, I look at the Torah as art, it's still orderly. In its most beautiful form, it's still orderly. It's not a Jackson Pollock.
So when we have disorder in our lives, it can actually affect other people and not just ourselves. And we have to keep that in mind. This little lesson had a good example. I'll read it to you. The Greenbergs have a special hook for their car keys, and usually whoever uses the car returns the keys to its place. One day, Mike took the car to the library. I don't know if it's the same Mike as over there or not, but he took it to the library, and when he got back, he forgot to return the keys to the hook. In the evening, when the keys still in his pocket, he walked to the restaurant where he works. His mother is a nurse who works the night shift at the hospital. At midnight, she was ready to head out for work, but the keys were nowhere to be found. She looked on the table, the floor, and then went through the cabinets. She started fuming. "Who didn't return the keys? I want to be late for work." She had no choice other than to wake her husband, but he didn't use the car. "It must have been Mike," said Mr. Greenberg, "but he won't be home for another half an hour. We'll have to call a cab to take you to work." So because one person didn't follow the order, it affected the whole family. The mother was late for work. The husband had to call a cab and spend money on a cab that they probably didn't have. So it just had a domino effect. But so what are some other examples of not following order in our lives, how it can affect others?
May I say, really, what you just said reminds me of sin. It's like, because one person does whatever, then it just
Yeah.
goes on down the
Sin
line.
does the same thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Sin affects other people.
Yeah, I mean, generationally. I mean, not just generational curses, but, I was thinking about somebody that I know who took a bet. I mean, it was a really stupid bet, and it's just, I mean, it's like, it's affected generations. It's like, I mean, that's just how sin is. That's all I have to say.
Well, let's look at the synagogue. When we have prayer books that people take out of the basket, and in an orderly fashion, when we're done with them, put them back in the basket. But what if people decided to not put them in the basket? And they just got left everywhere, and eventually some get lost, some get destroyed. Eventually we're not going to have enough prayer books for everybody. See how it affects the whole congregation. Anybody have any other examples I could think of? Maybe a
If you have
work
kids,
example? Or?
If you have kids and your house is chaotic, or and studies have proven if kids see an abusive relationship, then they think that's the normal, and then they will keep going and keep going and keep going in that same manner.
Was it you that mentioned the servant thing in the book?
Yeah.
Wait, well, let's look at that.
Slavery.
Well, let's look at that.
I'm sorry?
Let's look at that for a minute. I don't know what the author said. I didn't read it. But being a servant is kind of orderly in a sense that, we're called to be servants of God. And a servant follows his master's orders, his commandments. Does what his master wants. So Psalm 36 begins, to the chief musician, a psalm of David, the servant of the Lord. And Leviticus 25:55 says, God says, for the children of Israel are servants to me. They are my servants whom I redeemed from Egypt. So I don't think it's really talking about being like a slave. I think that would be taking it too far. It's more like a servant, as in the servant of God. It's just we follow his commands, we follow his authority, in a sense. Does that make sense? What did the book go into?
I just looked to see if there was slavery, because I was wondering or not slavery, but servanthood as a change, because I was thinking, did I really read that? Because it seems so obtuse. Like, how can you possibly think that's acceptable? I mean, it's just so unloving.
And there is a difference between an indentured servant in Scripture and a slave.
Oh, yeah.
And again, it's been a little bit since I've read this chapter, so I can't really say for certain what he was talking about. But my guess is he's probably talking about the indentured servant who owes a debt to somebody and is paying off that debt.
No, I think it talked about the Civil War, the servants of the Civil War.
Was it?
I was like,
I'd have to look at it. I don't recall.
I
So.
should reread it. Maybe I'm confusing it with something else. But
Okay.
I thought it was good.
But the whole idea of servanthood and being a servant of God is actually countercultural in our culture today. Everybody wants to do what they want to do, when they want to do it, and they want it now. And you know what I mean? But God calls us to a different standard. He calls us to follow his order and not so much our own. So he calls us to put our wants aside and put his wants ahead of our own. Which is also an aspect of order, because we are following the natural order of God being our authority and us being his people and his servants, for lack of a better term. So, does that make sense? So it requires us to change our thinking and to change our heart and how we view ourselves and how we make decisions in life. Kind of like when you are in school and you're in a classroom, you're part of the class, you have a teacher, and in that classroom the teacher is your authority and the one you are listening to, learning from, and there's an order in that. The students don't take up arms and start trying to usurp the teacher. They follow the teacher's leading and teaching and order for the classroom. I don't know that I have very much more to say about order. Anybody else have any thoughts on order?
Come on, Ma, you haven't said anything.
I really don't know what to say. I know my house is pretty much in order. Johnny and Chris both have chores to do, and they have to do them, like when Johnny comes home from work, I let him rest an hour. I let Chris rest an hour, then they do their chores. And this week I've been gone every day, and last week over Jimmy's babysitting every day, and I come home and Johnny has my house spotless. And, he just does it orderly, this, in order of everything. And that makes my life a lot easier.
Yeah. The author had some questions here in this little packet thing. I'll just ask them. How does order show up as an important feature of your work at your workplace? You don't have a job. Sharon, how does order show up at your workplace? How does order play an important role at your workplace, Sharon?
Well, if you don't know where things are, so you can get to them easily, how can you be very productive and get very much done?
So how would disorder show up at your workplace?
I'll have my day all planned out by the resources that I have, personnel that I have, and I get a call at about 9, 10 in the morning and say, "Oh, I need you to do this instead." And so I'm trying to get people where they're supposed to be and all that, and it gets to be chaotic sometimes because of that.
Your boss is total disorder.
So,
Yes.
Now, how does that affect you spiritually inside when that happens?
In a lot of ways, because there are certain routines that I'm supposed to do on a schedule, okay, and those routines, when I'm walking parking lots, picking trash in parking lots, to me that's even though there's chaos going all around, traffic and all this stuff going on all around me, I'm not focusing on what I'm doing, so I don't really pay attention to the chaos, but it's kind of tranquil at the same time, and I spend time with God during that time. If things there's things on my mind and stuff like that, and I don't know how to handle certain situations. It's during those tranquil times that I get the answers.
Mm.
So when I miss out on my tranquil time, because I'm running around doing this job and this job and this job, then today was a perfect example, and so like I say, you have your day planned out, you have your personnel planned out, and then like I said, just everything that tornado comes through.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it does affect me spiritually, yeah, because
Well, then maybe because your boss said, well, why didn't this get done? And you gotta tell him, well, it's because you sent me here, and then you take it out on me, and then I'm in a bad mood, and I kick your cat, so, yeah.
So
It has its, it continues.
So
You
when
know, I've got a disorder that just drives me nuts, and it's obsession with me. My clothes have to be hung a certain way. They have to be collar coded, or it drives me nuts. Chris, if his clothes get out of order and they're not facing the same direction, I have to fix it for him. If I have my glasses, my bird glasses, the birds have to be, and that's stupid, and it drives
That's
me nuts.
OCD.
And I wish I could get away from that. If I see a picture hanging crooked, my house or Jimmy's, I have to straighten it up. And that's a bad be that way, and I don't like being that way. But it's
I'm the same. I don't put my clothes in color coordinated.
I do.
But no, I understand. But I also, she goes so far as to iron her underwear and.
No, not that bad.
Yes, you have.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
No, I never did. I used to iron my bra straps and stuff, and that's stupid.
Well,
But that's just how you was brought up years ago.
Some people iron their sheets, and it's like, really?
I used to, but I don't anymore.
Iron their
Pillowcases and
Sheets.
Oh yeah. You did that years ago.
Yeah, you got a million hours.
But yeah, Jonathan's right. That's more OCD.
I once knew a guy in college had to have certain clothes on a certain color hanger, and he had to have certain color hangers even.
Well,
Even
I'm that
that
way. I've got two different collars, and if I put a different collar in there, I take it out and give it away. I just, and that's bad. I hate being that way, but I don't know how to change. But my house is in order.
Then there's Paul. We have clean and unclean. That is his order.
So when things are in order like that, do you feel calmer
Oh,
spiritually?
absolutely.
And when something's not, it kind of disrupts
I
you
get up and
spiritually,
fix
right?
it.
So that's a
Well-
good example.
I was helping Sarah today in her bedroom. And she was straightening up her room and hanging her clothes up, and I was watching her hanging them up and telling her to put this one here and this one there. I'm on her like, I'm trying to make her like me, and that's not fair to her.
Let's pick on the bus driver.
Okay.
So let's say you're going through your route and you're running late because something happened to throw the schedule off. How does that affect you spiritually? Or can it affect you
Sure.
spiritually?
I don't know if it affects me spiritually, but the
Would you
kids
not
know
say some
I'm
choice
pissed off.
words?
They know to tread lightly, but I'm not in a good mood.
Yeah, so
Well,
I
you
mean,
can take last Friday when the driving was god awful. Boy, I snapped at the kids constantly
yeah,
because I needed to focus out here, not behind me,
yeah.
and it makes a difference how you work with others, react with others.
Yeah, so if we take that in the whole concept of there's always a reflection of the physical and the spiritual. When our spiritual lives are following the order of God, it kind of keeps our lives more in mind, more calm, to focus more on Him, to listen to His voice. But when things in our lives are happening to throw everything out of balance and out of whack and delay things, or things just not happening right, it affects our spiritual lives, where it makes it harder to listen to God because we got so much going on through our minds, worry, stress, other things to focus on, and it just disrupts our whole relationship with God. So that's the way order is so important. And if order is out of order, your life is out of order. Everyone's out of order.
Out of order.
So for next week, everybody got a pen and paper? Write these down. Identify where you could improve the order in your workplace.
I don't work, you remember? I don't work.
You work at your house doing stuff, I'm sure.
Identify what?
Where you could improve the order in your workplace.
Can I borrow my boss?
Sure. And number 2, make a list of steps you could take to create more and better order in your workplace or home.
Can you say that again?
Yeah. Make a list of steps you could take to create more and better order in your workplace or home.